In this section, I'm going to talk about the foundations of my pedagogical philosophy. I've been teaching for more than 17 years now in higher education. And this journey started from teaching undergraduate in seminary in Cape Town. And it was an interesting moment that was really the crossroads. Was post-apartheid South Africa, and a lot of students had never been in a multiracial context of learning. So for the first time, some of them were encountering a classroom with white students and white students with black students, and so-called colored students in the context of South Africa, and Indians. And so you had a variety of students in a classroom, and so part of the challenge for me as a professor or lecturer was to be able to address that diversity in such a post-apartheid political context and socio-political context, to be more accurate. So when you first teach, you want to do the best you can. And I do remember being really a very strict professor or lecturer, and I wanted my students to excel. But I quickly realized that there are some linguistic components to this. So I grew up in Mozambique, and I spoke Portuguese, but I had to learn to speak Portuguese because I was born and raised in the peripheries or urban areas of Maputo, in which we spoke our native languages. And in that case, I spoke Xangan and Xizonga, so until the age of 4. And then by the time we had to move to the city, which was the post-independence, we were told that you have to learn to speak Portuguese very quickly. And I remember asking my parents, my uncle and aunt, and my grandmother, if I could just futa, which meant you just say whatever it is that comes to your mind. And they laughed and they said, yes, you can. And that was the beginning of an adventure, a linguistic adventure for me. And so I had to remember sounds of Portuguese, even though I did not know what Portuguese really was supposed to be like in terms of the words that you use and so on. But I remember the sounds. And so I started using those sounds in my futa language, and just saying whatever it is that came to my head. Bear in mind that the first white person I ever met was at a beach in Maputo. We had come from the pre-urban areas of Mozambique or Maputo and went to the beach, Costa, which is where my mom actually lives, right in that area right now. But at the time, that was a very luxurious opportunity for me to actually be able to go to the beach. And not that black people didn't go to the beach, but it was a different experience. And not being really a first language speaker of Portuguese, I realized that my students might have been facing the same kind of situation, the black students in particular, who had been really confined to the townships. And so how would I expect them, or how could I expect them to come to the classroom and excel and become these really formidable English speaking and articulating English and so on students? And I just had to face my own past and say, had I been the one growing up in those neighborhoods, I would have probably not been able to be as articulate. And so I cannot expect them to be as articulate. So I learned quickly and very early in my career that the importance of multicultural context and being aware, being sensitive to that. And so my evaluations of the students were different. in terms of the language dynamics and even of how they narrated their stories. They responded to questions. So I needed to understand that beyond the code, there's a cognition, and so the cognitive systems are different for English-speaking students and non-English-speaking students. So understanding, being fortunate to understand some of the African languages, in Southern Africa, helped me to be able to get that right in the beginning. So this journey has then taken me to develop this pedagogical philosophy over time. Instead of being this tough grader, this person who's just looking for, maybe to just put students in competition with one another and make them really work super hard in the sense that they satisfy my requirements, I developed an Ubuntu or humanist community of learners' perspective. So this classroom that students come into become then a place for people to learn in community. But first they have to understand their humanness. So I talk to students about what it means to be human. And I introduce them to this concept, which is the Africa-derived concept, Ubuntu. And I talk about Ubuntu being really this perception of human as a person being a person unto persons. In that way, there's no othering, there is no way one can actually isolate oneself to think that I can become this super incredible person at the expense of others or in competition with others. But rather, we are all in this community, and so we learn together. But you need to get the humanness aspect straight from the beginning. Now, there's got to be some kind of doubt. Some students will definitely not want to be part of this journey, but I encourage them to do it. And I say, it's not, this is not something you have to get right away, but we will work through this community. Hopefully, by the end of the course, you will see this having unfolded through the process. And so that developing an Ubuntu humanist community of learners is very foundational in the philosophy of education, or my pedagogical philosophy. The second aspect is learning as an ithaka or journey, which ties up with the first concept, the first idea, in that this is based on Constantine Cavafis's poem Ithaka. And this poem was introduced to me several years ago on my birthday. A friend of mine sent me this poem. It's a Greek poet, and is somebody who was born in Alexandria, Egypt, and he captured this image of journey very well, in that the whole idea was traveling to the island of Ithaca, and it's really an advice to someone about how when you travel, when you go to Ithaca, you set up on a journey to Ithaca, you have to experience things. You have to allow yourself to experience. You have to allow yourself to just be in the moment. And so as you go, experience, sense, feel, just open yourself up to everything. And so but here's the part of this journey, and I read the poem in full. But the interesting part about this journey is that process really matters. And so Cavafis says, you may get to Ithaca. So the idea of going to Ithaca, you're thinking, wow, this island's got to be great, it's fantastic, got to be really maybe milk and honey kind of a concept of land. And so when you get there, you might end up in a place where you say, what happened? I mean, is this it? And he says, well, wait a minute. Just remember one thing. Ithaca may not have anything for you, may not offer you absolutely anything that you imagined previously, but think about this. Had it not been for Ithaca, you would have not experienced all the things that you experienced before. And so Ithaca becomes instrumental you're experiencing all these wonderful things throughout your journey. So the process in that journey becomes critical. And so I tell my students, by the end of this course, you may get there and say, oh man, what happened? But pause a little bit and reflect on the experiences you've had. So I ask the students also journal to help them through this reflection process and this feeling process, this sensing of experience process. So I ask them to journal, and in their journals, my encouragement to them is that do not just write the reflections about the readings. And this is not about summarizing the readings. It's not about, very superficial kinds of things. This is about you. It is your journey. So you journal about your journey. You will talk about moments when you're sad, when you're happy, when you're disappointed, when you're angry at me or at anything. Just if you want to say some really bad stuff in there, you can say it. I mean, this is your place. This is your journal. So I say, well, I am not going to read those portions. I want to know that you've done your journal. So you have the freedom to actually close those portions, to seal them somehow so I don't have access to. You can just color them in a way that I can't read them. And but you have maybe a copy of that journal that you can always, if it's an electronic version, you can always refer to and remember what it is that you wrote there. If it's a paper copy, then you have a way to basically undo whatever it is that you did to seal it. And so you will know. I mean, if I were to violate your privacy, and I hope you trust me enough that I will not do that. And so anyway, but that becomes really good reflective process for them to journal. And many of them say, well, I have never journaled before, so I say, well, there's a flexibility around here. You can journal in whichever way you want. I mean, you can use any kind of media. You can write down in a piece of paper, in your notebook. You can type it, but you can also just vlog. You can do video logging, and you can do podcasting. You can just do like an audio recording of whatever reflections you are. You can be as creative as you want. And if you are a person who likes to draw, you can draw those experiences. And you can you can sing them. You can do anything you want. And so it's really very flexible, but it's very personal. And I want you to just allow yourself to feel through the journal, to sense, like open all your senses towards the experience, not just your mind. This isn't just a mental exercise to go through this class, but rather it is to learn in community, and you need to pour of yourself into this process. The third aspect is learning as a communal responsibility, manifested through commitment and equitable engagement. So you don't just come to class and learn and become a part of this Ubuntu community and journey with us and then think that's it. Actually, you have to think that all of us here have a responsibility to one another and for one another. So we make a commitment to engage, and also to engage equitably. And that means there's gonna, if we are going to embark through an Ubuntu and building an Ubuntu community, obviously our respect for humans is going to be present, because my personhood is contingent on your personhood, and therefore I have to be responsible to you and for you. And so we have this we build a sense of respect, a sense of equitable participation, engagement in the class. And so you cannot just skip group projects and skip work and try, just have to be a free rider, because you are a part of this community and you're responsible, in this community, you're responsible for and to everyone in here. So I invite students then to this pedagogical and community sphere outside of their comfort zone, And so because this isn't really a normal situation for many of them, and the reflections show many times they write and say, wow, that was engaging, it was very different. Usually I get to class and I do my work and I'm done and I get an A or whatever, and that's all I want to do. So this wasn't comfortable for me, and I totally agree, and I know it's not comfortable. It's intentionally uncomfortable, and so you get out of your comfort zone, and what we do is we do this by promoting innovative and critical thinking, building this humanist community, this Ubuntu community, and also exploring the use of technology and virtual platforms in learning. So sometimes you may not be able to come to class, talk about communal responsibility. You are responsible to just talk with your members of your group and say, look, I'm not going to be able to come because I'm really, have this situation with the family or something. We should discuss the details, but here's what I'll do. What is it that I need to do, or how can I engage more? And so you can use the virtual platforms, this whole technology we have, to engage with your group. You don't have to abuse this, because you also have that communal responsibility to be always aware of. So abusing is out of the question here. This is about working together as a community, and it has worked out very well. And so I do get good responses around that, but I would challenge everyone who's going to be a professor, a lecturer, a teacher, anybody who's going to be an instructor of any sort, to try to engage these three aspects of try to develop an Ubuntu community of learners, try to get students to think of learning as a journey or a thaka, and learning as a communal responsibility manifested through commitment and equitable engagement. And so I hope these tips help for those of you who are either contemplating becoming instructors, or those of you who are instructors and need to add a few perhaps new approaches to your teaching, or want to step outside of their comfort zones and move into a new paradigm of teaching. So thank you very much.